For the latest information regarding the COVID-19 pandemic in Cupertino, please visit cupertino.org/coronavirus.
All right. Well, thank you for the privilege of your time and opportunity to update on a number of issues that this state is facing. One of the most pressing and important issues the state needs to face is the state of small businesses and the imperative and importance that we do everything in our power to support our small businesses all throughout the state of California that have been hampered and hammered by this pandemic. I am very proud in terms of the work that I was able to do before I got into politics to have developed and conceived a number of small businesses in this state. It's a point of deep pride, it's a point of deep privilege that we were able to grow one small business with one part-time employee, Pat Kelly, to a number of businesses, 23 businesses at peak, and employ at peak roughly 1,000 people throughout the state of California. I say that not to impress anybody, but to impress upon you my deep pride and deep passion for entrepreneurialism. I recognize that each and every small business is not just about dollars and cents. It's about dreams. It's about people coming together, families putting everything on the line for opportunity, for new beginnings. It's about the character of our neighborhoods. It's about the pride we all feel when we embrace a sense of community that small businesses provide and small businesses advance. And so the issue is near and dear on a personal level, and by definition, it is foundational in terms of the economy of this state. When you consider just shy of 1/2 of all of the businesses in the state of California, some 48.5% find themselves employed in the category of small business. 7.1 million people employed in this state through a small business. 4.1 million small businesses specifically operating in the state of California, and a substantial percentage vulnerable to the vagaries of this current economy and to the challenges that are posed because of this pandemic. In fact, by one estimate survey recently that came out, 44% of businesses in this state, small businesses, are feeling vulnerable to the pressures of this pandemic, so much so that they believe they are likely to close in the not too distant future. That is a jaw-dropping percentage of small businesses that are looking at the prospect of a financial cliff so pronounced that they simply can no longer keep their doors open or can't even envision reopening their doors that have been temporarily closed because of this pandemic. And it's not lost on me, it shouldn't be lost on any of you, the disproportionate number of those small business men and women that are represented in minority communities, and in particular women-owned businesses that are overrepresented in that 44% statistic. And so this is really about the lifeblood of California and its economy. It's about a sense of pride and spirit that we all have, and sense of place in our own communities, so indelibly marked by the contributions of entrepreneurs that create the serendipity that is a part of life. The ability to walk down your sidewalk, to run into strangers, to have experiences and magical moments that define an abundant life. The ability to sit there in a coffee shop, maybe overhear some strangers walking in, get a sense of perspective in your own life, a sense of context in your relationship to your life to others. Those are experiences provided by small businesses, by people that put everything on the line and take pen to paper, come up with an idea and advance a dream. And so really this is about the California dream, and this is about our embracing that dream in a more robust and arguably refined way. And so today we'll be signing 3 pieces of legislation to support our small business community. And this is part of a package of small business supports, over a dozen specific actions that have been taken over the last number of months to support our small businesses throughout the state of California. I'll talk in much more detail about a number of those actions, but I want to bring up one of the leaders, one of the great advocates in the state legislature for small businesses, someone who was a small businesswoman herself for roughly a quarter of a century, someone who understands the challenges and travails of small businesses all throughout the state of California, not just in her current capacity as a state senator in her own district, but someone who's had a broader capacity of understanding, representing the state in her former role and capacity working in the executive branch under the previous administration. And that's Senator Caballero, who I'd love to come up and in particular highlight her advocacy on a bill to create a hiring tax credit in the state of California, one of the most significant tax credits in our state history that targets the needs of our small businesses in particular and addresses the direct impacts of COVID-19 and this pandemic in effort and in order to provide more supports for businesses to come back more robustly and hire more people and have a financial leg up in that process. So with that, let me just invite up the senator. She'll talk about her bill, broader package, and then I'll walk through some of the other bills that we're signing and some of the more specific reforms that we're also advancing in the state. Senator?
Well, thank you to Governor Newsom. I just have to say that it has been an extreme pleasure for me to work with you and your staff as we've worked so hard this year to try to come up with solutions to a global pandemic. You have been a great champion of small businesses, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I represent the 12th Senate District, which is a rural agricultural district. And so small businesses play a huge role in this district. Many of the small businesses are minority owned and, just as importantly, immigrant owned. Immigrants come to this country looking for the American dream and, quite frankly, to California looking for the California dream. And they come with very few resources, but a lot of energy, a lot of talent and family that help them make their small businesses a success. And this pandemic has really placed an incredible burden on them and their family because their dreams have been delayed, and in many instances, they're wondering whether they're going to survive this pandemic economically because of the requirement to shelter in place and to keep their family safe. And so, as I talked with these small businesses all over the state, their number one issue was, where am I going to get the capital? Where am I going to get the ability to start hiring the people that have been staying at home, that have not been working? How am I going to be able to do this? And we sat down and had a conversation among the Assembly and the Senate and the governor, and I was one of the lead authors on this particular bill, which is SB 1447. This bill expands California's assistance programs for small businesses during the COVID-19. So this is specifically related to this particular pandemic. And it establishes a hiring tax credit for eligible small businesses that can be applied against their income tax liabilities, personal or corporate, depending on how they file, or sales and use tax liabilities. And the importance of this particular tax credit is that for every employee that you bring back after the shelter-in-place order starts to change, then you get a tax credit of up to $1,000 per employee, which will be a tremendous assistance for these small businesses, along with a variety of other assistance programs that the state has developed. It's going to be critically important for them to be able to access this resource, to be able to bring their resources together and to move forward. You know, this is a tough time, and we've asked everybody to make sacrifices, both personally and professionally in terms of the business community. But they're looking for hope, they're looking for leadership, and they're looking for the opportunity to be able to access resources to make them successful. And this tax credit is going to be tremendously important. So again, I want to thank the governor for his support, for his commitment to small business, and for allowing us to do the work that we needed to do to be able to put a bill on his desk. It doesn't happen without the cooperation of everyone, and I'm very proud to say that that this came together in the last days of the legislative session, because there was a commitment among all of us to make sure that our small businesses come back. We absolutely need to see them be successful, and this is going to be one of the tools. Thank you, Governor Newsom, for your leadership. Thank you for the bill signing here today. Thank you for giving our small businesses hope as we move into the future. And thank you, because this is going to be a tremendous asset in our community, and we really appreciate it very, very much.
Thank you, Senator, and thanks again for your leadership, and also your co-authors, Cervantes and Bradford, that worked hard on this $100 million tax credit, $1,000 per hire tax credit to work against your income tax or your sales and use tax. It's eligible for small businesses, less than 100 employees, and it marks a consideration that directly relates to the pandemic, that your gross income had to have declined by 50% since this time last year. And the reason we created that construct of considerations is so often with tax credits, it goes to the haves, not the have-nots. So often these open-ended tax credits go to a handful of well-resourced companies, not necessarily those small businesses that need them the most. So I want to thank, again, I use the word refinement, for the refinement of this bill to really target those most in need. And I want to again congratulate Senator Caballero for her leadership and her stewardship to advance this cause. This cause includes a number of other specific supports for our small businesses. $125 million was made available in the recent budget in the iBank to support small businesses that fall through the cracks, that aren't getting SBA loans, that didn't get the federal PPP loans. 82% of people that have applied for that iBank loan program, accessing the $125 million, 82% are women and minority-owned businesses. That's exactly why we designed this program. It's exactly who we were targeting. So we're very pleased with the progress already been made in that space. Again, that was new money that was put in recently in the budget. We did something also that was rather novel, not as significant in terms of total amount of dollars available, but incredibly important in order to leverage the private sector and in order to encourage private sector loans to people in low income and underserved communities. We put an additional $25 million up for what we call first loss payments, meaning we're guaranteeing these loans against the private sector in order to encourage the private sector to make loans in underserved communities, higher risk loans for many small businesses. In addition to that, we put $10 million into what we refer to as a seed program. These are for immigrant social entrepreneurs. Again, leading the way in this space. Not a lot of states have put any resources in this space. It's a novel program. It's a seed fund itself, meaning we want to see how effective this program is. We'll consider next year the opportunity to substantially increase the amount of funding in this space, but it's a novel program and one that we collaboratively work together to advance this year. We also work to support our small businesses in a number of other ways. We are absolutely committed to manufacturing in this state. The vast majority of manufacturers aren't the large manufacturing factories that we tend to identify in the space. Many of them are small businesses. Give you an example of those businesses. If you go to a new platform we created with the California Manufacturing Association here in the state of California, 450 businesses are in a new marketplace for a new platform to encourage procurement to take place within the state, cities procuring, counties procuring, and the state itself, as well as private sector, to support homegrown California-based manufacturers. We have 450 companies now on that site, providing over 560 products specific to the PPP issues, sanitation issues, be it hand sanitizers, face shields, masks, gowns, and the like. small company, just as an example, that put their name on this platform recently, and we're providing face coverings. They just got an order of 25,000 face coverings. That small company out of Chico, California. Just an example of the benefits already of this new marketing platform, this new marketplace, this new manufacturing platform that we put together recently here in California. So we are absolutely committed to 2 points, reminding you that California is still the largest manufacturing state in the United States of America. I'll repeat that. California is the largest manufacturing state in the country, and California's capacity to do better is absolutely limitless as long as we provide the right incentives. And we are committed as an administration, the legislature committed to the same cause of advancing more supports for manufacturing in this state. And by the way, just as a proof point of that, while we procured a lot of N95 masks from overseas at the peak of this pandemic to deal with the scarcity of N95 masks, through this same platform, we are able to secure tens of millions of masks. I gave you an example of 25,000 masks recently in a small company in Chico, but tens of millions that came from a larger company in Santa Clara that repurposed their manufacturing plant in order to provide N95 masks for the state of California. So again, that's a proposal that is well along the way of being advanced and implemented, and one we want to build on into the future. We also want to build our marketing support to encourage people to shop safe and shop locally. We initiated through our Jobs and Economic Recovery Task Force this program in partnership with Nextdoor and Yelp and Facebook, Google, and many other platforms to help support a framework, a mindset to shop local, to go local, and to shop in a safe manner. And so that is also part of a promotion and a marketing strategy that we're also advancing here in the state. We extended by 90 days the timeline and the deadlines associated with collecting sales tax, collecting state taxes in order to support small businesses. We extended for 90 days. Relicensing requirements for small businesses in this state is another effort in order to support small business retention and development. We also provided up to $50,000 loans, interest-free, for up to 1 year for small businesses that otherwise are required to collect sales tax and then send those collections to the state. We said there are no collections required for a year, and you're able to access up to $50,000 of those sales tax. You can float those dollars to deal with cash flow needs without any penalty and without any interest attached. That's a significant program that currently has provided over $106 million of relief for small businesses. So $100 million hiring tax credit, $106 million relief in terms of floating loans up to $50,000 for sales tax that is owed to the state, a delay in terms of requirements on sales and use tax as well as income tax coming into the state, relicensing requirements pushed aside, support in terms of marketing, and support that will be included in the package of bills that I'm also signing here today to conform our PPP program, where California outperformed the rest of the nation. 13% of all the PPP loans in this country came in, or rather dollars came into the state of California, $68.6 billion. $68.6 billion of loans came in to the state under the PPP program. We have a bill authored by Assemblywoman Burke that will conform to state law a ability for the PPP program to no longer require the collection of state taxes, meaning we'll waive the state tax requirement under the PPP program pursuant to the bill that I'll be signing here in a moment. The other bill we'll be signing will provide $406.7 million of accelerated bonds to be distributed, to be put to work to create thousands and thousands of jobs here in the state of California in order to get people working and moving again. So we're basically accelerating bonds that are out there that aren't being utilized, that aren't being put to work. So that acceleration includes, as I said, over $406 million. That is a part of what we refer to as the Budget Junior Bill that I'll also be signing. I said there were a dozen things. Probably lost you on 7 or 8 of these. We put out information in this space, including an update on our Great Plates program. We are here at Solomon's Deli. This is a deli that opened up last year in July. 2 extraordinary women, one who's here with us, Andrea, been involved in the restaurant business for years. They put pen to paper. They took a dream, took an idea, old Tower Records in the state of California, took some of the cues of Tower Records, a little bit of its history, its founder, Solomon, and put together a deli that connected with some of the iconography, some of the spirit that was part of Tower Records here in the state of California. They put this deli, organized this deli at the peak of our economic growth last July, only to run in the buzzsaw of this pandemic. They closed on March 17th of this year, as so many other businesses did. At peak, they had 26 employees, but they've been able to scratch their way back. Even though their revenue's way down, they've been able to work through a number of programs that the city of Sacramento has provided and the state has provided. They were able to draw down a little PPP money. They were able to use that entrepreneurial mindset, long-windedly, to figure out a way just to keep the doors open, have some outdoor seating, and they're still operating. Not as many employees, about half of where they were at peak, but they also took advantage of that Great Plates program. That Great Plates program now has supported 8,904 jobs. That's an exact number, 8,904 jobs since we conceived this first-in-the-nation program. 9.1 million meals have been served to seniors, supporting businesses like this that are providing meals that we're getting reimbursed, 75% of the dollars reimbursed by FEMA and the federal government, the state providing counties an additional 12.5%. It's a virtuous program that helps our seniors that are isolated, that are quarantined, that are addressing their own health needs, that are in an economic box where they can't afford nutritious meals. They can't afford hot meals. They can't afford deliver meals. All three delicious, nutritious, hot delivered meals are provided through this program, supporting restaurants, keeping jobs, encouraging job growth, and generating sales tax back to the counties, which actually creates more revenue than the 12.5% the counties are responsible for providing in this program. Great thing about Great Plates, success leaves clues. This program's now being replicated in a number of other states. We took our entrepreneurial mindset into government, came up with this program, and it's wonderful to see it operationalized all throughout the state of California. And it's wonderful to be here at a business that was, willing to test the program and willing to support it, and is now the beneficiary of the program as well. Again, it's just another example of where we are trying to help support our small business ecosystem here in the state of California. I can continue down a path of providing more examples, more proof points, but I think at this stage we'd be better off by just closing with 2 final points and then coming to the reason we came here, rather concluding my remarks and signing these 3 pieces of legislation and moving forward. But I wanted just to acknowledge our Jobs and Recovery Task Force that has been helping us, over 120 individuals, that some of the most famous branded entrepreneurs in the United States, arguably the world, from Tim Cook to Bob Iger, that have participated in this task force for the course of the last 7 or 8 months. They helped generate some of the ideas that supported this hiring tax credit, that supported our efforts to accelerate bonds that had not gone out and been put to work. Also provided support for our Shop Safe, Shop Local program, provided tens of millions of dollars for PSAs to support safely reopening, and of course have provided supports for our sectoral guidelines in our reopening our economy. I want to just acknowledge our co-chair, both our co-chairs, my chief of staff, Anna Leary, and Tom Steyer, for their outstanding work on that task force. A lot of the work we are announcing and advancing here today comes from that brain trust. Accordingly, I want to thank my team at GoBiz. They put together an entrepreneurial task force that's partnered now with 20 different regions in this state, providing webinars and supporting our entrepreneurial ecosystem. That program is alive and well. GoBiz is also supporting our network of small business centers. We were able to draw down $34 million from the federal government to support those small business centers that are also more robust and more engaged than they've ever been. And so the GoBiz team and our Economic Development Task Force, thank you for all your good work as well. And let me just conclude as I now sit down and sign these three pieces of legislation by acknowledging the obvious. Good enough never is. We have an enormous amount of work still to do to help support our small businesses, and we cannot do nearly enough without the support of the federal government, and that is why it's just fundamentally foundational that Congress gets its act together, particularly the Senate, and supports Nancy Pelosi, our Speaker, and the House of Representatives' efforts to advance a new CARES Act, which will profoundly impact and benefit small businesses in the state of California in a way that the state alone simply cannot do. This is foundational and is fundamental to the revival and the recovery of our economy. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't just end on that foundational point as well. But with that, let me end my formal remarks on this topic. I'll come back up, update you briefly on health numbers in the state related to coronavirus, and update you on the fires, and then of course we'll take questions. Now, with the Senator's concurrence, let's sign these three bills today. All right. So what do we have?
It's a tough job.
It's a tough job. It's a tough job. This is the easy part. You did all the hard work. I get the benefit of that. So let's see where we are. Perfect. So, Senator, let me just get to all three. I will give you all three of these, since you were a big part of all three of these. And not only sponsored, but co-sponsored the other bills, and just thank you for your leadership, and very grateful for your strong advocacy on behalf of our business community in the state.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It means a lot. It's wonderful.
Thank you. All right. Let me, and Senator, you don't have to stick around for this, but let me quickly update everybody on the fires in the state of California. Last night, we had a number of new fire starts, over 50 fire starts in the state. We now have 28 large fire complexes that we're battling here in the state of California. 4 fires in particular have generated a lot of attention, and deservingly so. The Fork Fire, the Bear Fire up in Butte County, the Willow Fire in particular. Those 3 in particular are points of concern, new fire starts that have spread throughout northern part of the state primarily. We have made progress, additional progress on the CZU complex in and around Santa Cruz Mountains. We made progress last night, encouraging progress in the LNU complex and the SCU complex around Santa Clara. We had some issues related to spotting of fires because of the winds from the previous 24-hour period. We had better containment overnight. We're encouraged that the wind activity appears to be dying down, which is encouraging. And the rest of the week looks a little bit more favorable from a wind perspective and a weather perspective. That will aid our efforts on these 28 major fires in the state. The wind, of course, over the last 48 hours has presented challenges not only with the existing fires, but these new fire starts, but also with air quality throughout the state. I grew up in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and a number of photographs that have been sent by family, friends this morning overwhelmed my inbox. There is obvious concern around air quality, obvious concern that has been highlighted by not only those images, but the reality as this wind events have generated a lot more air quality problems, particularly as it relates to ash that has now created, well, in sort of an ash dust up that's obviously impacted the air quality in and around not only the Bay Area, but other parts of this state. We continue to get out-of-state resources and support, though we have wildfires in the Pacific North that we are struggling with as well, or states like Washington and Oregon are struggling with. So the mutual aid system's a little stretched up there, but the mutual aid system coming in from other states is presenting a kind of support you would expect of the conditions that we're currently facing. We want to, again, just thank all our first responders, firefighters, some 14,000 strong that are working on these 28 major fires throughout the state of California. And just want folks to know that last night we received 2 additional FMAGs. These are the Fire Management Assistance Grants. 2 additional FMAGs were approved by the White House. I want to thank the White House for that support and the timeliness of that support. And we have the prospect of 2 additional declarations of emergency for 2 different counties. That information will be forthcoming as we assess the efficacy of doing so later this afternoon. So we continue to lean in, making progress on major complexes that have been highlighted over the course of the last few weeks, continuing to focus on that Creek Fire, the SQF fire, in Tulare County, and obviously the Willow Fire, and now these new fires coming in around Orville, coming through Butte County, this Bear Fire in particular. I want to just extend again, my absolute appreciation for all the mutual aid that's coming from within the state, not just out of the state. You see fire engines from all jurisdictions, all throughout different parts of this state, just testament to the incredible collaborative spirit that defines this moment and defines the state of California's response to these wildfires. As it relates to response to another challenge in the state and issues related to COVID-19, the total number of new positive cases we're reporting today is 1,616. Our positivity rate over a 7-day period has dropped to 3.6%. Our positivity rate over a 14-day period has dropped to 4%. So that's encouraging news. 3.6% positivity rate over a 7-day period, 4% over a 14-day period. Our tests continue we continue to struggle to get back to where we were in total number of tests coming in the state, primarily due to the wildfires. That continues to be an issue, and we're aggressively trying to work around some of those issues. But nonetheless, we're averaging still over 110,000 tests on a daily basis. We tragically lost 83 lives in the latest reporting period. That averages out over a 14-day period, about 107 lives lost, reinforcing how deadly this disease continues to be and how seriously we must take the transmission and our concerns around large-scale events and the transmission of this virus. So some progress as it relates to COVID-19 continues. Hospitalizations beginning to flatten a little bit. Declines continue in the ICUs. We're monitoring that, as well as monitoring the progress of many different counties in the state that are moving from that purple status into the red status, some from red status into the orange, and some orange status into the yellow status. So that's an update on the wildfires, update on COVID. And again, we're here to update you on the 3 bills we signed and our absolute resolve and commitment to help our small businesses all up and down the state. And with that, happy to take any questions.
Hi, Governor. I'm Phil Willon with the LA Times, and I'll be asking questions on behalf of the California press. You've mentioned recently that your administration may add a new metric on testing diversity for counties to reopen that would target resources and efforts to prevent and fight COVID in communities with the highest risk. But there's scant details about what you mean by these new metrics. Can you explain that a little more? And should counties be worried that you might inject some of your liberal policies into the pandemic response?
Well, it's an interesting question. I'm a pragmatist when it comes to the issue of addressing this pandemic. We're driven by data. We're driven by science, not ideology. And as it relates to the issue of equity, that's a foundational principle that I believe should be universally embraced, not just here in the state of California, but around this nation, and for that matter, around the rest of the globe. It's a fact that disproportionate number impacted by COVID-19 are overrepresented in the Black community and in the Latino community. So a framework around equity to me is foundational. Looking at the data, looking at the facts, it's a responsibility that we all share to address those that have been disproportionately burdened by this pandemic. The metrics that we put out as it relates to equity, primarily on the issue of testing, those that are under testing and are not doing the kind of robust testing and are not testing in diverse communities. It's a metric to which we consider. Some are over testing compared to others, meaning some are committing to deeply testing their diverse communities, deeply reaching out to underserved communities, and providing an abundance of testing compared to other counties. So that's a factor that's considered as well in relationship to the positivity rate and the case count. So it's a simple metric, but primarily that metric is considered in respect or in relationship to the issue of how the testing is being conducted and how robust and how inclusive the testing protocols are.
Adam Beam of the Associated Press asked that last week he said California accounted for more than half of all PUA unemployment claims nationally. A former EDD director called that ridiculously high and said it could be a sign of fraud. How is the fraud investigation going at EDD, and when do you expect it to be completed?
We've made a lot of public comments about our efforts in that space. We clearly identified this as a concern. And as a consequence, we have our EDD investigations unit working on this. We're working in partnership with the U.S. Department of Justice. We have new protocols in terms of eligibility that we put into place. We have new technology that we are also ID.com, which we're advancing, a new protocol that will be in place by the end of September. And we are looking through all the PUAs in a way that does justice to those concerns around fraud, which, by the way, is not unique to the state of California. In fact, we've seen it in many other states over the course of the last few months, and now working in partnership and working through the examples and lessons learned in other states, we're conducting our investigations with the benefit of previous investigations that have been underway in those jurisdictions.
To stick on EDD for a little longer, I know you have a strike force in place to look at payment of claims, but there are still hundreds of thousands of Californians who have not received payments. What would you say to these people who may see your response to this as a failure, something that's been unfixed for months and months?
Yeah, we are committed. We've done more than any other state in terms of total number of claims. We are trying to work aggressively through that backfill. We have a strike team, 5 new people that we pulled in, thousands, quite literally thousands of people that we've trained from other agencies, other departments to come in and help support our efforts at the department. We have been very vocal, very transparent for many, many months, updating the public, updating the extent possible the millions and millions of people that are trying to access this system. I'll say what I've said in the past. This is unacceptable, but so is the condition of this system when we inherited it. I don't look at that as an excuse, but I can assure you this, having talked to almost every governor in this country, they are experiencing similar challenges with their systems that were not designed for the kind of level of activity this pandemic has advanced. And so we're committed to not only addressing the short-term issues and addressing the speed, at the same time verifying so we can address fraud on the one hand, which means go slow and be accountable, at the same time move expeditiously. And so it's that push and pull that we have to balance in terms of advancing these efforts. But my commitment is to no longer balance on the pin of an inadequate database and inadequate IT system, and that is to commit to the medium and long term to completely overhaul and refine the EDD system, which by definition is inadequate to any future pandemic. So that is happening concurrently as we try to patch this system together, and we are committed to advancing in partnership with the legislature these long-term reforms.
Now, that's not the only system that's had trouble in California. The Cal-Ready system and its problems weren't really a big surprise for anyone who's familiar with how that works. Did Dr. Sonia Angel take the fall for that because your administration got a black eye over the failures there?
The answer is no, and we have substantially addressed those concerns. We built a parallel program, an IT system specific for COVID. That was actually done under our stated timeline. We were able to accomplish that, now put that system into place, but the answer is no to the question.
Alexei Kosov at the San Francisco Chronicle has a question about the new book that came out by Bob Woodward and about President Trump downplaying the virus. If the president had been more forthright with the public, would Californians' lives have been saved and the economy have taken less of a hit?
I am not able to answer that question. I don't know anything about the details of the book. I've been focused primarily, particularly today, around the issue of the pandemic, the fires, and obviously our support of small businesses. When I have a chance to read the book or references from the book that the question is referring to, I'll be able to respond.
I mean, we'll set the book aside. I mean, if Trump had been more forthright with the public about the severity of the coronavirus pandemic, do you think as many people would have died in California, and do you think the economy here would have taken such a major hit?
Yeah, it's a different question, and to the extent that I'm here to adjudicate as a pundit my feelings about how the president has responded to this, it's difficult to do because I think the context of your question is in relationship to the book and whatever may have come forward from the book. So I don't want to answer that question out of context. The relationship we've had with the Trump administration in terms of the supports we've received, the requests that we have made of the administration, those requests have not been denied. Those requests have actually been supported on a consistent basis. I've not been shy about stating that. Again, I'm not here to play partisan, I'm here to call balls and strikes, and I've done that fairly consistently throughout. And so in terms of the relationship that we've had with the White House in terms of getting the supports, the specific requests that we have made in getting that support, we've been very abundant in terms of expressing where those supports have come in and expressed some concern where they haven't. But vast majority have been requested. The vast majority have been received.
Marissa Lagos at KQED and Nicole Nixon at Capital Public Radio wanted to know if you've learned any more about the Capital Christian event this past weekend, if you've been briefed by the CHP about what happened, and if you can tell us what you learned.
Yeah, so what I've requested of the CHP is to put together different protocols. And so what we're requesting is the CHP and the Department of Public Health to put different protocols into place, obviously highlighted by concerns of this large event where no social distancing was practiced, where physical distancing was not practiced, where the safety protocols, wearing a simple mask, were not advanced. The vast majority of people that participated in this rally, this event, there was singing. There's real concern about the spread of this virus, not just for those that were at the event, for people that innocently were not at the event, because people that may have been exposed from the event coming back into a community, coming back into a household, and potentially putting other people at risk. That, respectfully, is not acceptable, and so I've requested specifically of the California Highway Patrol to partner with the Department of Public Health and put new permitting protocols in place. That will be forthcoming, but it has to be based on constitutional rights, constitutional protections, at the same time public health and public safety. It's not just for religious events. This would include events more broadly permitted by the California Highway Patrol, protests, and other public events.
Cheryl Miller at the National Law Journal wants to know when you're going to appoint a new California Supreme Court justice. Now retired Justice Ming Chen announced his retirement in January, and 8 months later the Supreme Court is now having to rely on pro tem justices from the courts of appeal to do its work.
Yeah, very shortly we'll be announcing the Supreme Court pick.
There's been a couple questions about any potential special sessions, whether on wildfires to address long-term planning and short-term aid necessary, and also COVID response. Is that something that's...
It's not currently under consideration. We are advancing our efforts to suppress the transmission of this virus. The state of California has seen 7-day positivity rate drop below 4% to 3.6%. We put out new tiered protocols, new color-colored protocols as it relates to the reopening of the economy. We did so in partnership with local health officers, in partnership with industry, sector by sector. We are confident in our approach and our direction. We've substantially mitigated the rise in the transmission of these rates. As it relates to wildfires, the California mutual aid system is working as it's designed. CAL FIRE is doing an extraordinary job. We're getting support from out of state. We're very blessed to have had the support of previous legislatures as well as this current legislature to advance an historic amount of funding to effort and aid our efforts to prevent as well as mitigate the spread of these fires. What we're experiencing this year is simply without precedent, and no legislative session could address the 14,000 lightning strikes that we experienced over the last few weeks. No legislative session can foundationally address the conditions this heat wave has produced in terms of the heat dome and the impact that's had, as well as the Santa Ana and Diablo winds. And so at the moment, that's not under consideration. But again, when it comes to any legislative session, I am open to that conversation as long as the legislative leadership is aligned and we have a purpose beyond any consideration.
Now, you spent today talking about a lot of the assistance for small businesses, including tax credits and tax deferrals. Eventually, the bill will come due for all this. Whether it's for tax credits, it's kind of sapping state revenue. Tax deferrals will eventually have to be paid. How well equipped is a state to deal with the loss of revenue, and how well equipped do you think small businesses are to pay this tax liability?
Well, you want to create revenue, you want to create jobs. If you want to create jobs, you can't be anti-business. And so the whole point of this effort is to stimulate economic recovery, which stimulates revenue, which stimulates virtuous cycle of tax support. And so the idea is not very complicated. We balanced our budget last year with consideration of all of our priorities in the state. The $125 million we put in the iBank was part of our budget. We were able to balance a $54.3 billion budget shortfall last year, and we found the money for this program as it relates to those small business loans. We found the money for many different programs to support small businesses. We felt it was a necessity with this additional $100 million request based upon the sluggishness of this recovery to provide an additional $100 million of support. It didn't in any way significantly impact our projections in terms of shortfalls next year. And I think the sooner we get people working again, sooner we get people back to work, which is the intention of all of these programs, the revenue will more than offset the investment that we're making in those supports.
I have a question from Raj Vora of the Jagrati newspapers in India. I guess you have a worldwide audience on these briefings. He wants to know if you'll consider releasing 4 national inmates in state prisons to their home countries for safety concerns and cost concerns. And on top of that, there's been some immigrant rights advocates in the state that have criticized your administration for releasing inmates in the prisons for COVID reasons and other reasons and handing them over to ICE. Can you explain why that's being done?
It's been done historically. It's been past precedent of previous administrations. We maintain it as the appropriate course for our administration. We've been clear on that for over now 18, 19 months. As it relates to the specifics around individual prisoners, that's done on a case-by-case basis. It goes through a very exhaustive process and protocol. We have formal protocol through our parole board. We have other protocols on commutations and pardons that are separate and above from that go through a process within the executive branch with concurrence from other advisors that the administration has put into place. We've made many commutations and pardons over the course of the last number of years, consistent with the previous administration, and we continue to work to address the issue of concerns of COVID in our CDCR system. 1,457, maybe 1,459 individuals currently tested positive in our prison system. We monitor that on a daily basis. Right now, Folsom and Avenal prisons remain top of our mind in terms of focus. We're down to 11 cases at San Quentin. We made real progress in that space. And again, trying to decompress that system, look at vulnerable patients, or rather vulnerable prisoners, many that are patients in the mental health facilities as well as in our hospital facilities within CDCR, and look at the issue of this virus and look at compassionate releases in that space that are lower risk. And so all of that is part and parcel of our approach and our strategies, well defined, well established, particularly over the course of the last 7-8 years under the Brown administration, extending through my administration.
There's been a lot of stories and a lot of things written about the stress that parents and students are under with the distance learning programs underway, and I'm just curious about your level of concern about what potential cost that may have with all the screen time kids are now have on their laptops and all the other devices. If something is gonna have to be done later on to address all that and some of the impacts it had on them, both physically and mentally. And second, I'd like to find out how active have you been with your children who are also doing distance learning? I mean, are you helping them every day, trying to navigate that, do homework online? I know you're obviously the governor and very busy, so how much have you been able to help them?
Well, I've got 4 kids, so I'm not intellectualizing this question. It's a conversation not just having with my wife, not just a conversation I'm having daily with my 4 children. It's a conversation we have with other parents, friends, family members that are struggling with the same. There's a reason we put $5.3 billion up in this year's budget, and that was to address the issue of learning loss and provided flexibility for our school districts to address the concerns around the issues of distance learning and learning loss, particularly for low-income communities that don't have access to the tools of technology or download speeds or even any broadband whatsoever, and the impact that that learning loss will have on them more permanently. We also are looking at the issue of wellness, and not just physical, but mental wellness, mental health, as it relates to same supports, and providing flexibility with those dollars to provide additional additional capacity for those districts to support parents. And so this is a very trying and challenging moment in the history of this country, for that matter, the history of the world. The overwhelming majority of countries are expressing similar concerns. Same time, our default is this: we must make our schools safe. That means we must keep people healthy, not just our kids, but paraprofessionals, our teachers. We put out very prescriptive protocols going back in July about what that looks like. Worked in partnership with CDE, worked in partnership with the Superintendent of Public Instruction, worked in partnership with 1,000+ districts in this state to get their feedback and advice and counsel. We want to get kids back in school for the social-emotional part of learning experience, but we need to do so in a safe manner. The good news is, as the positivity rates continue to decline, the likelihood that we are closer to reopening our schools in a safe manner, because the background infection rates are beginning to stabilize, presents itself. And so we hope this is a temporary frame, and it should be, because we want our kids back in school to address the issues related to the question and address the issue of anxiety that I face as a parent and that other parents face every single day as it relates to particularly our younger kids that have a very difficult time on these learning devices. I have a daughter in particular, lasts only a few minutes every morning before she gets up and runs away from that screen, only to spend the next 20, 30 minutes to coax her back in front of that screen. Older kids are faring a little bit better than the younger kids. And so that's an experience I imagine replicated by millions of parents across the board. Certainly the case in my household, and it's the case households all across, not just the state. And so the most important thing we can do is mitigate the spread of this virus, continue to take seriously these non-pharmaceutical interventions around wearing face coverings, and to try to avoid these large mixing events, which are just simply irresponsible, where people are not following the rules, that request a permit but don't abide by the commitments they make, and put other people's lives at risk, and increase the likelihood that not only that we see a spread of the virus, but a delay in getting people back to school, and a delay, if I may, in getting people back to work. There's simply nothing more important in this state and in this nation. If we care about getting our kids back in school and care about getting the economy moving again, than addressing the spread of this virus. And there's nothing more potent and powerful we can do than simply wearing face coverings and practicing common sense and physical distancing and avoiding mixing in large crowds. If we commit as a nation to do that, if we commit as a state of doing that, we will move much more expeditiously to advance the collective cause of educating our kids in the way they should be educated, and creating the economic conditions where states like California can not just survive this pandemic, but thrive coming out of this pandemic.
In November, California voters will decide whether to restore affirmative action in California. And you've been in California long enough to kind of witness firsthand the evolution of this issue over the past 3 decades. Where do you stand on it now, and do you support this initiative?
Yeah, I came out formally for that initiative 2 weeks ago. I've long been an advocate for reform in this space, going back many, many years. Was vocal on the campaign trail. No one should be surprised by the support of this initiative. I was very heartened that the legislature was able to move this forward, very gratified by it. And I know firsthand, not only through my personal experiences as relates to the work I've done in public service over the course of decades, but the work that I had the privilege of doing as a member of the UC Board of Regents and the CSU Board of Trustees, to see the impact that affirmative action coming out of 1995 has done, particularly the black students, and decline in the total number of black students enrolled. I think this is a significant initiative, and I hope and encourage others to support this cause in November.
Do you think there are any drawbacks to the initiative, or
There's
restoring
always
affirmative
consequences
action?
and unintended. I think the drawback of the status quo is self-evident, and it's exampled by data, statistics. It's exampled by opportunity lost. And so I think overwhelmingly the jury is back, and in this case we have the opportunity in November to right the wrong of 1995. So with that, I want to just thank everybody for their time and attention, and again, just want to thank all the businessmen and women out there that are struggling. I just want to express deep respect and empathy for everything you're going through and all the struggles that we face moving forward. I want you to know that the state is trying to do more for you than we've done in the past, but I also recognize, final words, that we have a lot more to do to support your efforts to recover and to address the deep anxiety you have about prospects of your ability to continue to operate in this state. And so just know that we look forward to many new announcements supporting our small businesses over the course of not just the next months, but many weeks. And I can assure you, having worked over the last few weeks on next year's budget, that we will prioritize, yet again, our small business community and make a commitment that builds on the work that we've done to date in effort to help stimulate and support your growth in this state. And so with that, let me thank everybody for their time and attention. I look forward to catching up very, very soon.
For the latest information regarding the COVID-19 pandemic in Cupertino, please visit cupertino.org/coronavirus.